what's up, guys? We're going to do some dry brushing as another scenic painting technique, and I'll show you what I already started with. So I just painted onto my little canvas or whatever you're using. I just painted like a light beigey, yellowy, brownish layer. It's dry, and I'm basically going to make this look like strips of wood, strips of hardwood, like a hardwood floor. I've used this technique when we had to do a play on that takes place on a cruise ship, and I had to make it look like a deck, which is just all wood. This is a great technique for that. And these little black lines just represent the slats that are in between each panel of wood. The technique we're going to use is called dry brushing, and I use this technique for so many things, like all the time. It's my go-to technique. And it's like how it sounds. It's dry brushing. So when we paint, we always dip our paintbrush in water just to prevent paint from drying on it. But we mostly want this brush to stay dry, and I'll show you how that happens. So I did dip it in water, but I wring it out really good, and I'm even gonna like wipe it on my pants right now, just to remove any other excess water. You definitely don't want this thing dripping. And what I have here is I have some darker paint right here. I'm going to use this darker brown color. And we could do this reverse. We could start with a darker color and then dry brush light paint onto it. But I'm going light and then working to dark. This is already dry. Okay, so this is going to be wet on dry paint using dry brushing. Now, one of the reasons why this is called dry brushing is because the brush stays mostly dry. It's not dripping wet, and we don't put a lot of paint onto it. We're just getting the tips saturated. We don't want it dripping off. Like, actually, I have a little bit of paint dripping off right there. So I'm actually even going to tap it a little bit just because I just want the tips to have a little bit of paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly drag this brush across the canvas, and you'll start to see a wispy, rough, liney texture that kind of looks like wood. See? Okay. Now I have some splotches up here, so I can kind of even those out a little bit. Now when I start and finish, I kind of want to sweep and kind of rotate my wrist. If I go like this, if I keep the same angle the whole time, I'll show you what that'll look like. Okay, this is kind of like how not to do it. See, now I have this line right here, this edge, this thing. It's like, oh, she totally started her paintbrush right there, you know, because the paint was more loaded onto that brush. So I'm going to try to even that out. It happens to the best of us, but you want to kind of rotate your wrist like this. That way it lightly meets the canvas, gets a little bit of paint, and then it kind of drags and follows through. And then we don't have such harsh areas of like, hey, this is where I put my brush on the canvas. Okay, so you can hear it, just tapping my brush in the paint. Okay. Tapping it in the paint, and then I'm tapping it out of the paint. That way there's not too much. Remember, this is dry brushing, and I'm going to come in and drag over. Okay. And you want to kind of keep your lines, try and keep them straight. Wait, sorry if you didn't see that on camera. I didn't realize it was out of camera, out of frame. Here we go. You can add a little more pressure if you don't feel like the paint is coming off the brush that well. But just remember, dragging, not soaking your paintbrush in a bunch of paint is the way to go. Try to keep the lines, again, nice and straight. That way they're not angled. You'll make it look off. You'll make it look weird. You make it look whimsical. The wood grain that you see in like floorboards and hardwood floor and stuff, it's all straight pretty much. Again, I use this technique for lots of things besides wood. I use it for distressing, making a surface look aged and old.